All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to anybody who is watching via the online broadcast. I want to start off, is there any questions about this week's material that I can answer for you so far? Policies. Did you all manage to find your grades? Yes, okay. So when I grade your applied discussion forums, okay, you will find your feedback within Turnitin, within grade mark and Turnitin, because it's really easy for me to mark papers in that format. Especially in my fire, it's not as easy to mark papers as it is there. So, yes.
My applied discussion will not open, probably because I turned my thing in late. I think that's why.
Your applied discussion forum,
right.
You need to check the box beside it. If you're still on my fire, so I don't confuse my online students, you need to check the box beside it that says complete, and your discussion forum will open. I know. There weren't until Saturdays. Jessica, you emailed me. Somebody else did too. Was it? Yeah, they are there now. They were not there earlier. Somehow when the class got transferred over from last semester, that setting did not transfer. And so I apologize. As soon as I realized what was happening, I fixed it for you all. Those pesky little settings can be the death of you. Are there other questions? Yes, James.
Next week, so on the upcoming book report, if you want to do that first, is there a template or we have to make it?
Okay, good question on the book report. In fact, the book report I put in originally for week 3 because that is when, because it was originally extra credit, and what's now the final project was required. And so my thought even then was that you could start it in week 3, but you could turn it anywhere in between week 3 and week 8. And that I wanted you to start it early because it would help on your final project. At this point, if you're going to do a final project, I still recommend starting your book review early, but you do not have to. It's actually due in week 8. So the book review is due in week 8. And then I have a pretty specific set of directions. Did you find those? It's not a template per se, but there's very specific directions. You're supposed to identify the thesis, provide supporting details for the thesis of the book, then find articles that support, at least one article that supports and one article that provides a different perspective on the thesis, compare those, and then talk about your work application. Okay, and it doesn't matter which book you do that in. I think there's 4 choices depending on what field you're in. There's some that pertain more to finance, some that pertain more to analytics. I think there was one that was more marketing.
Is that in the syllabus or is that in the 3?
It's in the link for the book review. I thought in this class that actually ended up in week 8. I think Syra transferred that for the face-to-face class. Online class is probably still in week 3. It's in the course materials. It's in the directions are in the course materials as well. The book review is required. Is optional extra credit worth up to 5% of your grade. So that's a half a letter grade. So that's taken students from like a B- to a B+, or more importantly, from like a D to a C-. Okay, and you can work in teams on it. You're not required to work in teams, but you can.
On the final project.
On the final project, not the book review, but the final project can be a team project if you would like it to be.
When do you start talking about the final project?
I don't spend a ton of time in class on it, especially now that it's extra credit. I think I only had 2 students out of 50 do it or 2 teams out of 50 do it last time. So I will be glad to answer any questions for you on it, but I won't spend a bunch of class time explaining it. There's a bunch of documents for it on my fire. So go look over those. And then if you want to do it and you have questions, I'll be glad to help you with your questions. The other thing is your theoretical discussion forums. Weeks 1 and 2 you needed to do, but after that, they all pertain to your final project. So if you're doing your final project, I highly recommend you do the discussion forums just because they're a way to collaborate with your team. And it kind of keeps you up to date so you don't have to do the whole thing in the last week. But if you're not going to do the final project, you don't have to do the applied discussion forums after. So this week should be done. You don't have to do any of the rest of them.
The
theoretical or applied?
The applied have to be done.
Right, because you just said you don't have to do the applied.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Let me be specific.
Yes.
Theoretical, just the theoretical. The applied, where you're doing your homework scenarios, those are weeks 1 through 7, and those are all graded and counted. Okay, but the theoretical, you only had to do weeks 1 and 2. So week 1, we discussed how to present numbers. Week 2, we discussed ethics. Okay, and so the rest of them, like I said, all have to do with your final project. You do not have to do any more of those. Now, if you didn't do weeks 1 or 2 and ended up with the 0 for some reason, you could do some of the others and it would bring your grade up. If you got 100, the way my fire calculates grades, there's no benefit to you, unless you're just collaborating with your team. But there would not be any grade benefit. Does that make sense? Because the category, if you got full credit, the category total is already 100%. Can I answer any other questions for you? All right, do you want to see a problem from this week? All right. Is there a specific one from chapter 4 that you all would like to see that is not a homework problem? There is. I'll be glad to do it.
Oh, I have a question before we move on from grades.
Okay.
The pretest is not for a grade, right?
The pretest is not for a grade, no. I do need you to take it. It's just a comparison. So it's for our reporting purposes for our accreditation, so we can measure your growth.
So I'm pretty sure that mine is for a grade according to my fire, because everything else is good, and then that brought me down like.
Okay, I will check it. It is not. If it is counting now, I will fix that for you because it is not supposed to.
I had a hard time.
Again, it may have been another setting that didn't transfer correctly for whatever reason. I mean, it was right in the class that it was transferred from. Anyway.
I just have a question about the homework.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in the problems, they give you the Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
File. We've used those existing models, but what do you recommend for somebody who's not really good at quantitative, building the models from scratch, or just kind of jumping in and using that information?
Well, you need, when they give you a file, there's a lot of information on the file that is not generally in the problem. So you need the information one way or the other that's in the file. It generally doesn't, I mean, there's not a model pre-built in that file yet. Are you asking whether to combine that with one of the example models?
Yes.
It
seems like you can learn better just building the model and doing it all rather than just transposing the information into.
It doesn't work particularly well to transpose the information to the other to take an existing model and to then try to change it for a new problem. Unless the problems are really, really similar, I think that could be more confusing than just building it from scratch. If you have two problems that are really, really similar, it might be easier to use the existing model. I'm going to close the door.
You're just using the data.
Yeah. You're using the data, and then like I find it easiest just to build my own model from scratch on them and not try to worry about adapting another model, because like I said, it can be more confusing to adapt another model for me than just to build one. There were problems, right? No two are alike.
It's a little confusing. may just become so simple.
Mhm. All right. Anybody have a request on a problem they'd like to see? That wasn't a homework problem? Could find one that's similar if you want to. And like I said, depending on how long it takes, I don't mind doing more than one. Probably want to stick with level A problems. I mean, I don't mind if you want to challenge me with a level B, but I didn't ask you to do any level B, so that might be more than you want to see.
I had trouble with 50.
Okay.
Homework, so if there's one that's similar to it. I'm just not sure.
Okay, that's the grading. Let's see. Is there another one? I'm sure there's another one that has grading in it somewhere. $76. Do you want to look at 76 and see if that might be close to what you're looking for?
Yeah, that seems like it would be.
All right, so to do 76, we need the file 4-76. So you'll need to, you don't have it on this computer, you'll need to log on to Cengage. Also, did your answer checks get fixed? So that you can, I know you could see whether or not they were right, but can you see the extra information with them at this point? I sent a request for them to be fixed.
I tried it, just, you had to put it correct.
Okay, but you didn't get the hints. Okay. I'm so sorry. It is definitely better than nothing. Not what we're going for, but better than nothing. They're 476.
Turn the light on back here.
Oh, sure. You're welcome to turn the light on. Yeah, no problem. Make yourselves comfortable. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
I think Jess is getting the hints for the quiz. It should pop up in like a little yellow box, right?
I think so. You should see, there should be a graphic. So what browser are you using? So you're getting some text, but you're not getting the graphics afterward.
Yeah, it's saying
Okay.
there should be 3 constraints in the solver, check your formulas or enter correctly, enter 1,000 for each type of unit stocked, and then that's it.
Okay, and then, yeah, what you should have after that is a graphic that shows what your formula should look like when you enter those numbers. Not there. Okay. I'm so sorry. What I'll do is I'll send you the document like I did last week that they're supposed to base that on. So it'll have that picture. You're welcome. Okay. Are we ready to go on this one? Okay, does anybody need another minute to read over the problem? Okay, then let's go. What is your objective of this problem? First of all, is it a min or a max? It's a min, okay? What are you minimizing? Not the way, what part? No, the size is given in a constraint. You have to meet the minimum sizes. Yes. Yes, so you're minimizing cost. Yep. Okay. What are our decision cells going to be in this case?
Order size.
Order size is going to be a constraint.
How much of each rock?
How much of each rock you use? Yes, that's the first part. And then to fulfill each order. So it's not just to know enough to know that you use this much of each rock. You have to know which order to use that rock in. Okay, so what does that mean? It means a matrix. Yep. All right. And just making sure that was up in case I had any of my online students that wanted to chat. All right, so your decision cells are the amount or the rock type per order. Okay. Now, what are your constraints? Okay. So must meet all orders. Okay. What else? This is where the quality comes in. So, you guys can tell me when you can't see all the way to the edge, because it looks fine on my screen. So I don't always realize if it doesn't look fine to you there.
Ratio of phosphate.
Ratio of phosphate, yes. So let's do that. There's going to be two constraints here, so let's put them separately. Must be above minimum percent. Must be below max percent phosphate. Good. Are there any other constraints that anyone sees? So just the three.
order size has to be less than the amount available?
Yes. So good. So you can't use more rock than available. Rock used must be less than available.
So where it says the amount at the top, like 5, 6, 7, 4, and 450, is that the amount available? Or is that?
So this is the rock type. This chart is there's 500 pounds of rock 1 available, 600 pounds of rock 2. Yeah, and then the order size is going to be in row 11. So 500 for order 1, 600 for order 2, 300 for order 3, etc. That makes sense? All right, let's make our matrix for our decision cells. And I'm going to highlight these cells and note that they're my decision cells. Okay. All right, so now let's work on our first constraint. Must meet all orders. So to do that, we're going to take order 1. We're going to sum the amount of rock used in order 1. Okay, and that's going to have to be less than or equal to the minimum order for rock 1. So or the minimum or the size for order 1. Yes, it's going to be greater than or equal to. Okay, really it's going to be equal to in this case. They're not going to have you do more than required and think, but we'll do greater than or equal to. Because sometimes, I don't think it's going to be the case in this problem, but in some cases, you can't get the exact amount. You have to do a little bit more on some than others, just because of how the problem works out. Anyway, we should be able to, did you see what I did here, how I linked this cell to B11? That way, if I want to get a sensitivity on the order sizes, you just have to select these cells up here, and any place that they're referenced would automatically update rather than typing in 500. I'm going to copy this all the way across. Okay. All right. Next, we must be above the minimum % of phosphate. Okay. So let's actually will be phosphate minimum, and the calculated phosphate and phosphate max. Phosphate minimum is just, let's see, it's given separately for each order here, okay? So I'm just going to link to that cell. So I'm linking my phosphate minimum down here to my minimum phosphate down here. The calculated phosphate is going to be a sum product, so equals sum product of the amount of rock used for array 1 and the amount of phosphate in that rock for array 2. Okay. And then max phosphate is just another link to that cell. And it has to be equal to this one, and greater than or equal, no, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. Has to be greater than or equal to this one and less than or equal to that one. And then I copy these all the way. Oh, I can't copy these all the way across. What did I do wrong here? You want to? Yeah, I need an absolute reference. Good, James. Okay, so if I copy this across, let's think through this. When I copy this over to order 2, this first range is going to move over here, which is what we want, so that it's referencing the amount used for order 2, not order 1. However, the second number right here, I don't want this to move, right? Because if it moves over one column, now I'm referencing the amount available, not the percentage of phosphate in each rock. So my numbers would be off. And then by the time I got 3 columns over, now I'm referencing zeros. And so it's going to look like there's no phosphate in any of the rocks. And then it's going to tell me my solution's impossible, or my problem is impossible. Okay. So what we have to do is make this an absolute cell reference. Okay. Yeah, I did. Okay. Here we go. Now we should be ready to copy and paste. Okay. And our mins and maxes look good to me. All right, so we're ready to move on to calculate what's next. Our last one is rock used must be less than available. Okay, so this is another, who can tell me what function I need to use here? Sum, yes. I need to sum the amount of rock 1 used and constrain that to be less than or equal to the amount of rock 1 that's available. Okay. And I can copy these down.
Can you go back over that, what you just did?
Sure. So the amount of rock used is all going, rock 1 used is all going to be in this column. So I summed this row, I'm sorry. So I summed row 19. Okay. And then that row ends up having to be less than or equal to 500, which is the amount of rock type 1 that's available. That makes sense to everyone?
Do we need to link those cells, or can we just input those?
Yep, that's what I linked them. Yep. Yeah, you want data only entered manually one spot in your spreadsheet, and you want to, any other place you want to put the data, you want to have it linked.
So would you again, in
V23? Oh, this one, yeah, this is just a sum of, oh. We're gonna get to do that whole thing again. Okay, well, you know what? Then I guess doing it again will be okay, won't it? Ah, fun. I appreciate that vote of confidence. All right, so our objective is a min on cost. Okay, our decision cells are a matrix of rock type and order. Our constraints are must meet min orders, must be above min phosphate, must be below max phosphate, and must be below rock available. And actually all of these are would be equal or above or equal or below. Let me put that in just to make sure everyone understands. So now I'm going to go back and recreate my matrix. Oh, and you guys still are not able to see my screen because, go. wasn't what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and save this while I'm at it. All right. So do you want me to explain what I'm doing again, or do you just want me to catch up to where you are supposed to be? Not hearing anyone say otherwise, I'm just going to catch myself up.
What was B24 or B24
again? B24 was just a sum.
Some of the above.
Some of the above, right. So you made sure that you had enough rock that you were meeting the minimum order is what we're after.
Okay.
So then greater than or equal to, and then that's the order size is what we're going to constrain that to. And this has to be less than the rock used has to be less than rock available. I can be better at labels. Rock available is given in the problem up here. So we're just going to link to that cell. And we can copy and paste down. Min phosphate, actual phosphate, and max phosphate here. So our min phosphate, again, is just another copy and paste. Our max, or not a copy and paste, but a link. Our max phosphate is a link. And this cell is a sum product. The actual phosphate is a sum product. So we're going to take actual phosphate, or the actual amount of each type of rock used, first order, and we are going to multiply that by the percentage of phosphate in each type of rock, and then the percentage of phosphate in each type of rock has to be an absolute value so we can copy and paste the thing. And then this has to be, no, not greater than, less, no, yes, it is greater than or equal to, and this has to be less than or equal to. All right, so this is where we were essentially when my computer crashed, right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So did I miss anything? I'll come back to where I was. Are there any formulas you want to see again before I move on? Slow down a little bit. I'll check with my online students. Is there anything those of you who might be watching online want to see? You can tell me in the chat. Going once, going twice. All right, let's move on to profit. I'm sorry, it's not profit, it is cost. So you're gonna do the easy way or the hard way?
Okay.
Easy way, okay.
Does the easy way work every time?
For this problem, it works great. In this case, you just need the total of each type of rock used times the cost of the rock. So that is what type of function? Sum product. So you need a sum product and cost and amount of each type used. Okay. All right, we ready to put it in solver? So I'm going to set my objective cell to B33, which is cost. I'm going to set it to a min by changing my orange cells in this matrix. So the rock type for each type of order. And then I have 4 constraints I'm going to have to put in. So the first is that that the orders have to be greater than or equal to the orders needed. My second is that.
What was the orders needed? I mean, I'll look down for a moment.
Oh, okay, sure. Let me cancel, and I'm going to close this because I didn't label this very well. So this is the amount of rock per order, and this is pounds or amount needed per order. Okay. We'll go back into solver and we'll go back to constraints. So then when we had listed our constraints, the next one was the minimum phosphate. So the minimum amount of phosphate required has to be greater than or equal to the actual amount of phosphate. Okay. Oh, didn't work. There we go. Okay. Then the other one was that the actual phosphate required had to be less than or equal to the max phosphate. Did I get that one?
So for the first, or not for the first constraint, but the constraint that we did before that is minimum phosphate.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go back and look at that one because yes, so that I did flip the sign. So yes, so you have to. No, I didn't do that right. Yep, I have that sign wrong. So what let's do it like this. So the amount of phosphate used has to be greater than or equal to the minimums. Okay.
So your actual phosphate.
Mm-hmm. Actual phosphate has to be greater than or equal to minimum. I mean, you can put it either way. If I kept them the way I had them, I just needed to swap the sign. So this sign is wrong here. I need to swap it.
Which sign is wrong? The one you have up there?
The 28, the one that's in row 28, 3.5% should not be greater than or equal to the actual phosphate. It should be less than or equal to. Do we understand why, what I did there? Okay. So I'm going to add one more. So the amount of rock used has to be less than or equal to the amount of rock available. Okay, so I've got 4. I'm going to make my method simplex linear or simplex LP, which is the linear. We ready to run it?
What was that last constraint?
F18 to F22 has to be less than or equal to H18 to H22, which is that the amount of rock used has to be less than or equal to the amount of rock available. In other words, you cannot plan to use more rock than is available. We ready?
Just wait just 1 second.
Yep, be glad to. I'm going to close out of this real quick and fix my sign.
Max phosphate's climbing on there. You copied line 31, row 31. It's adding to it each time by 0.1. It should be constant. So B31 should have been an absolute reference. And then copy the absolute reference. And same thing.
In 31?
Line 31 and line 37, minimum phosphate is a constant all the way across the row.
It's not.
It's only a constant.
It's going, no, look on line 27. All right, see 3.5 next door to it.
3.8. And it should be 3.8 according to your given.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not constant. It's not supposed to be constant.
All right.
Yeah, it was a little bit different for each order. No, good question though. Because that can do it. Like
I usually think of it as a product specification, so it's going to be constant for a product. But
right,
it's not.
and frequently it is. In fact, this is one of the first problems I've worked where it wasn't constant for a given product.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense. Correct.
so essentially, we're doing 4 different products. If you want to think about it like that, that all have slightly different specifications.
Okay.
So it might have been less confusing to call them products versus orders. Any other questions on this before we try to solve and see if we're right? All right. We'll go ahead and solve it and we'll see if we're right. And if not, we'll fix it. Ah, solver couldn't find a feasible solution.
Just means
Yeah,
you
I
have
thought-
Yep.
equations.
Yeah, no, well, we may have, let's see, we may have an issue with a sign somewhere. Let's look at the reports. See if we can figure it out. But what it's seen is that
It's horrible.
I probably typed my constraints in wrong, but I didn't get violated.
you didn't get violated.
I didn't get the violated status.
Did it actually solve it for you?
Yeah, it solved it.
Okay, very
But it's
good.
probably not the right answer. This is based on my experience with these problems. Rarely do I do it.
Let's see. All right. So let's go back and look at our constraints. All right.
Oh, you can't make that bigger, can you?
I
Readable?
I can make this readable,
Yeah, not the solver.
but not the solver parameters. No. But I'll be glad to make those bigger. All right. So B23 to E23 has to be greater than or equal to B25 to E25.
Maybe, I don't know if this would be helpful for everybody else, but whenever I went back and named my ranges,
That
it
makes
was
it
like
easier.
so much more manageable.
Do you do
Okay.
that on every one of your problems? It has a tendency to add up the time to each solution.
Oh, 100%. Because I'm like, where did I even put D?
Oh, I know. What is that?
Yeah, I'm like, is this even on the right
Same.
spreadsheet?
I don't mind if we want to go back and name the ranges. That's okay with me. Let's see. So those should be correct. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to name the ranges. In fact, I think if I did it, it might even.
Just highlight, like, see here on Max, say, you just highlight the numbers with the left.
Oh, yeah. I knew that part. I was just thinking, man, you found something where I could put
Oh,
your
yeah,
button
well,
and name all my ranges.
It's called an administrative assistant.
That worked. I have one.
Yeah, I'm like, what does this pay per hour? Is this outsourced?
What was the cost equal to again? It was just it's just like some product of the cost, times the amount used or something like that.
The problem with using named ranges for some of these sums, though, is that it doesn't. Then you can't copy and paste the formulas as well. So
Right. Goes down.
it does. All right. I suspect I've got a sign flopped somewhere. I'm going to go back and look at that. The amount of rock needed has to be greater than or equal to the amount ordered. Minimum phosphate, which is this one's 27.
Oh, I think we forgot to do it. The amount of rock per order has to be greater than the order size. Right? Is that what we?
Yep.
Rock used to go.
Yeah, I've got that one. So that should be my B23 has to be greater than or equal to the amount needed per order, which I have. And it's still not able to find a feasible solution. All right. So F18, the amount of rock used has to be less than or equal to the amount of rock available, which is as it should be. Actual phosphate has to be less than or equal to the max and greater than or equal to
Actual phosphate, calculated phosphate was
It was the column of rock type.
times the percent phosphate. So like the first order would be all the sum product of that is the sum product of percents.
I'm going to change this one to just an equal. See if that does it.
Same thing. Second order sum of but that, and that needs to be, whenever you make the equation for that, you need to make the, this absolute value, or the column doesn't move. So it'd be dollar C. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not paying attention.
Wonder. Well,
On the cost equations,
on the cost equation,
you had it just for the whole complete everything, matrix times the cost.
yep. Which
You
should,
didn't do it per order first.
no, I
You should have
didn't.
done it that way.
Yes, and that's why I asked, do we want the simple way or the harder way?
Well, I'm pretty sure you sneaky picked the harder way and just didn't tell us.
It's so hard to figure
Dig us up. I'm Snooki. Go ahead and give us the easy way now.
Yeah, sorry. No, because what he was saying is the harder way to calculate the profit would be to go calculate the cost per order, and then you would sum those. Would be harder might be the wrong word. It's more involved. So all right, well, this is where I would use an answer check. And since I don't create it, or I don't have an answer check, let me go pull up the actual solution and see what's going on. See if we can figure out what our deal is. Yep, 76.
So this is the solution set that you have
Mm-hmm.
for all the example problems?
Yep. All right, so let's start filling in. So 12.5, 50, and 107.5. Okay. 450 and 150. And type 3, rock type 4, 400, and 87.5. What I'm doing now is I'm putting in the decision cells so we can try to troubleshoot and see if there's a problem with our formula. So rock used is 500, 600, 400, and 450, which is correct. And then it should be, total should be exactly what was needed for order, which, oh, you see what I did? And let me see if that was our, no, okay, it was right. I accidentally deleted that, but I was thinking it wasn't there, which would have, that would have made it so that we were incorrect. All right. I see what we did. And this ties back into what the juice problem. So it's actual phosphate per pound. We didn't add the per pounds.
Yeah, but it didn't give you the unit in the problem.
It did. So what it was is you have your minimum phosphate, and let me change these back to percents. Actually, no, I'm not. So it had to be 3.5%, and then it was per pound. So the amount that was, we have to multiply that by the amount actually made. Does that make sense? So there has to be, your minimum phosphate has to be 3.5% of the 500 pounds.
I got you.
So 7.5% the right amount? That's what I had. 7.5%.
7.5%.
17.5%.
Yeah, 17.5. Yep.
That was the correct.
Yep. So.
Because I couldn't follow.
We're multiplying that by the size required, right? The minimum phosphate is 3.5% of the.
And it stopped working again.
Wow.
I keep crashing it. Okay.
Maybe can we just like send it to you?
You can't actually. I think that I probably have at least it really close. No, I don't. Yeah, if somebody else has it more closely, you're welcome to send it to me.
I'll send it to you before I.
So it wouldn't take. It also wouldn't take me very long to get back where we were.
I'm gonna time you this time.
You're gonna time me, okay?
Like 10 seconds.
I'm gonna race you.
Okay. Can I build it quicker than you can send it to me? Maybe. You probably can.
Well, it is going to be faster. She'll look at the mail. So.
Yeah.
It's in total control.
But, you know,
All right. You win that one. I will pull it up and we will do this from. All right. Oh, I have to actually download that. Okay. So what we are doing now is instead of just saying 3.5%, we have to do 3.5% of the amount of pounds that were actually produced. And so actually percents no longer make sense in that case. Oh, okay, hold on. I will readjust. Is that good?
so we're multiplying it by the size, the order size required, right?
Yes.
For
Yep.
the phosphate minimum need.
Now, there is another way you could theoretically do it, but it would violate linearity. So I want to show it to you just so you know not to do it. Okay, and explain why. If we had left, in fact, let me do this. So if we left it as the minimum, okay, and here's our maximum, we could have taken the amount, we could have done the sum product like we did of the amount of rock used times the amount of phosphate.
That's what we did before, right?
Yes. Okay. And then you could have divided that by the amount of rock used, which would have given you 3.5%, which is the same here. However, in linear programming, you have to be able to take things to 0. Otherwise, it violates linearity. What can you divide a number by 0? No. And so that way, that means that this method of getting an average doesn't work because it violates linearity. Because when they start zeroing these numbers out, this goes to 0 and it says it can't happen. It doesn't work mathematically. So it's not. So then you have a nonlinear problem. So you'll see other problems where you have to work with averages and such like this. So you want to do it by taking the percentage and multiplying it by the amount required rather than taking the quality number and dividing it by the total.
It's because the function has to be.
Exactly.
It's discontinuous at that point.
Exactly. Because something divided by 0 is not really 0. It's impossible. Okay.
So then going back to min-max, you took the sum times the ratio then?
Yes.
That's all you did? You didn't do a sum product?
Nope. I just had to do the sum times the ratio. Yep. This the amount of rock needed times the ratio of phosphate. That was the minimum.
I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you using, where is it the percent of the amount required and not the percent of what the actual order ends up being?
Right, because this already has factored in the number of pounds that were used and the percentage of each pound in that rock. So in order 1, you've used 12.5 pounds of rock type 1, so 12.5 times 2%, okay? And then the next 2 are 0, and then you would do plus 400 times 3% plus 87.5 times 6%. So you've already got this 500 pounds accounted for. So what you have to do is you have to keep them even somehow. And you can either do that by multiplying the min and the max that are given in a percent, or you can do it by dividing the actual amount of phosphate, but the dividing doesn't work because it violates linearity. So you can't use a linear programming model at that point. You'd have to use a nonlinear.
My percentage of my phosphate minimum is coming out 2,280%. What way?
Are you dividing it and multiplying it by the ratio?
You want to send it to me? And let's make sure this works. I'm going to zero this out. I'm going to make sure it works and that we found all the errors. It's not always that clean, so I find it easier to zero the whole thing out if I'm going to test and make sure that my model is working the way I think it should when I put the numbers in myself. Or you can use wrong numbers, but you want to see them go back to the numbers. Okay, and that is the solution that we were looking for, I believe. Oh, that's right, it closed out. I think that was right, though. Pull it up one more time. Okay, somebody that has that, send it to me and let's troubleshoot it and see if we can figure out what happened.
Change your phosphate minimum to a general or like a number instead of a percentage.
Good call.
Wait, so did we already establish if we were multiplying for your B, whatever the minimum phosphate is? Would you mind clicking on B27?
Okay. Yeah. What you have to do is you have to multiply the minimum percentage required by the amount of rock in the order.
So I think my question, and maybe your question too, is why are we multiplying it by the amount of rock per order instead of the amount of rock required? Because if the requirement is what's specifying our minimum percentage.
Yeah, and if they're equal, it really wouldn't matter. Where it would, I always do the amount used because in case some problems you might go over or under for whatever reason. So it's, like I said, I always do the amount used. It's safer.
It would matter depending on whether you're wanting to deliver a certain amount of phosphate or whether you're wanting the phosphate concentration in the rock to be this.
Right, but our book is saying that the minimum phosphate percentage required is based off of the order that's required.
So percentage required, that means it's in the rock.
Right, but she's asking why are we basing it off the amount used versus the amount needed. And in this case, it wouldn't matter because they're equal. Okay.
Yeah, but if they weren't equal.
Right, because in some cases you might have the amount of rock has to be greater than or equal to the pounds needed. And for some case, if you're trying to increase profits or whatever instead of minimize costs, you might produce more. No, actually, here's the more common scenario. You're trying to maximize profits and you have you know what the market demand is. And so you don't want to produce more than the market demand. So it becomes less than or equal to the market demand, but you might not meet all of the market demand. And so you don't want to base your minimums. You don't want to base your minimum or maximum quality percentages on market demand because you may or may not meet all of it. So you want to use the actual. So I just get in the habit of using actual because it's safer. It will work for all of your problems, whereas if you're doing the pounds needed, it may or may not work for all of your problems. Again, it does in this case because they're equal.
If the thing that you were looking for in your product wasn't phosphate, let's say something like gold. And the important thing was the quantity of gold delivered, total amount of gold in the order. Then you would go with the order. If it was the concentration in like the ore, and I was going to process this ore, and it had to be the minimum or maximum quantity amount in the ore per pound of ore to be able to process it properly and make a profit, then you would do it based on. Okay, so you're saying when it's minimum and maximum, you would do it based off pounds needed, but amount used. You're thinking if you were wanting to maximize the amount of phosphate used, you would do it off pounds needed? It would just depend on what you're trying to do with your overall process. Yeah. If you're wanting to get all the phosphate out and you're saying, okay, this is, interested in the phosphate. Right. Well, you'd have to set up a lot of the problem differently to do that. And again, because the amount of rock and the pounds needed in this case are exactly equal. It's no big, yeah. Like I said, the deal is if you're trying to like maximize profit and you may not meet all the market demand, you don't want to use market demand. That's right. But always use the like you're saying the amount of rock. But like I say, unless you were just trying to deliver a certain set amount. Right. Like I said, if you were trying to say, okay, I need 10,000 grams of gold in all of the rocks, however big rocks, however big the order is, I don't really care. I just care how much gold quantity totals is in there.
Right.
Then you would.
Yeah, you would still tend to use the amount actually delivered. It's just safer because you
wouldn't end up with enough gold. If you're interested, it just depends on whether you're interested in what the order contains or what the concentration in the rock contains. That's right.
Well, and again, like I said, you'd set up the problem differently, but you still would want to calculate it based on what's actually delivered. So.
Because that's where we need to make sure that we have
3.5% exactly.
phosphate. That
Exactly.
The order we're making has 3.5% phosphate in that order, that one order.
The rocks in that order, 5% phosphate. In this case, it's the same because it's equal. It's the same.
So good question. All right, it's 7:14. At this point, would you like to have me troubleshoot some of your homework problems, or would you like to see me work another problem? All right. I'm not hearing anybody really vocal either way. Does anybody have a homework problem they would like me to help them troubleshoot? Okay. You want to email me your file? I'll be glad to look at it. Let me know which number. If there are any online students listening, I'd be glad to help troubleshoot your models too. You're welcome to email them to me.
On the answer check, I get question 1 and 55 wrong, and I have no idea why.
Okay. Why don't you send me... Send them both since nobody else seems to have any. Let me know when you've sent it. And if anyone else has one they'd like me to look over, go ahead and send it too so that...
I have 55 as well.
You have 55 as well?
Okay. So just
okay.
Follow along with it.
Go ahead and send it. And if it doesn't answer your question as I answer hers, then I'll be glad to look at yours separately. Okay. I know some of you said you had trouble with, was it 50? If anybody kind of has 50 started, I don't mind helping troubleshoot.
Mine is, they're all on one workbook.
Great, just send the whole workbook.
I did mine that way too. It was like our range names got so like.
That is mine with range names. I have to go through and take out the ones.
Yep.
I just sent it.
Okay. Let's look at 55 first, and then we'll go back and look at 1. Did you use an integer constraint?
55.
For 55?
Yes.
Okay, that's probably it.
Okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't make.
it's a little, I know, it doesn't make sense to stock a partial, but your quiz is based on partials. So I'm sorry about that.
So just take off that one.
So if you take off go ahead and take off the integer constraint and rerun it, and yeah.
I wouldn't want to buy it.
Now, those of you who submitted this problem as your applied discussion forum, when you submitted it with the integer constraint, it was fine. I mean, I didn't take off points for an incorrect answer or anything there. But like I said, your test is all based off of the solution that came with the book, which did not have an integer constraint. Like I said, I'll give you, it makes more sense with an integer constraint.
Now I'm getting 65950, which is different. Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that that's correct. Does anyone? Well, actually, I've got it right here. 951. Yeah. Okay. That's that.
I get 951.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and that is not the correct answer.
I'm not even like, we get the range names. That the integer constraint you're talking about.
The range names that were used.
Like this capital tied up for it, like where does
Sure.
that information come from?
She named her ranges, which you can do, but you don't have to do. If you've named the ranges, what you do is you go to formulas. Get that right in a minute, and you do you click this use in formula, and you do paste names at the very bottom, and you can paste the list.
I only had 1, 2, 3, 4 that came up.
Right. Well, and that depends on how many ranges you've named. So you can name ranges. You don't have to.
Like when I do solver, is it going to look at the ranges?
You can put it in either way. It will look at the ranges, but if you did name them, then you just select the ranges and they're numbered. Okay. Do you want to send me yours, Nicole?
I did.
Okay. We can look at yours.
Like the unit stocked is where I got stuck. I don't
Okay.
know how to find unit stocked.
So the unit stocked is what? You're not having to calculate that. What is that? It's the unit stocked is your decision variable. So the unit stocked is what you're wanting solver to tell you. Okay.
And nothing needs to be there to run solver. Is what you're saying?
Right. Right. What you do is you set these as your decision cells.
How do I do that? Like just
Within solver itself.
Okay.
So when you go to solver, and let's see, did you do anything in solver yet? You did not. Yeah. So you see where it says by changing variable cells? Those are the changing variable cells are your decision cells. So that's where you would select this range.
I do solver before I do solver table.
Yes. Yes. Solver table only works if you have a solver model that's active.
I was thinking I couldn't run that until I got those numbers.
Mm-mm. No, it's the opposite. The point is that you want solver to tell you what the optimal solution is for these. Okay. Does that help some?
So I run solver first.
Right. You've got to get your other constraint. You've got to get all your formulas in. So let's look at that. So your total value good is your sum product by the margins from selling. Very good. You've got to get the rest of your constraints in before you run solver though. Okay. So otherwise it's going to tell you it's unbounded. It can make it as high as it can possibly make it, which doesn't end up making any sense. Okay. If you want to work on that a little bit more, I'd be glad to come back to it when we've got individual time. All right, so Jessica, the other one you wanted was number 1.
Yes, except I think my answer is still wrong. At least that's what the answer is trying to say.
No, your answer's right. Wait, well, give it to me one more time and let's make sure. But I'm pretty sure that your answer was right.
I got 65,950.92.
Okay, yeah, and 65,951 is what is the rounded number. It might just be a function of how you're putting it in answer check, but it's correct.
Okay. The other one was number 1.
Okay.
The red ones are the ones.
Okay. That's close. Let's see. I think it's a little bit high. If I let me look at the key. Yeah, it is a little bit high. Oh, yeah, you don't need the integer constraint. Go ahead and take that back out and rerun.
Now it's 2028.
Nope, that's still a little bit too high.
Question you working on?
One.
I'm gonna pull up the answer check.
Will we have just one constraint?
On that one, should you have just one constraint? It ends up needing to be generally put in as 2 different constraints. It depends on how you lay out your spreadsheet. How's that? Okay.
2 to 3. I have 3.
You have 3. What are your 3 constraints?
So I did actual exposure should be greater than or equal to required exposures.
Okay.
And then I did this. So on my sheet, it's J20 is less than or equal to J22.
Okay, so what's J20? So you have the sum of Revenge, The Simpsons, Homeland, and The Good Wife has to be less than or equal to 12.8.
Oh, that?
Was that something you were playing around with for your scenario that you forgot to take back out?
Yes.
Okay. It happens. Let's go ahead and take that out. And let's solve it again.
So now,
And now you have the right answer. It's a really good job, really simple issues. Do you want to look at 450? I know you said you were struggling with that one more.
I'd like to.
Okay.
I think the matrix helped a little bit. So I didn't even have it set up like a matrix.
All right. So let's do this. Why don't I give you guys 10 minutes to kind of work on this problem? And then you can shoot me a model and we'll work on troubleshooting it together. Let me look and see if anybody from my online classes emailed me anything.
I got some.
Nope. Okay. You have what?
A simple question.
Okay, go ahead and shoot it to me.
Okay. Well, it's just asking on that orange juice one.
Mhm.
It says the first thing is the solver table thing on varying the cost per bag. There's no cost per bag. There's only giving the revenue per pound and the variable cost.
It's the variable cost. So it gives you the variable cost per bag and the variable cost per juice, right? No, but that's what it's asking you to vary is the cost.
Labor and everything. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's what it's asking you to cost is to do is, I'm pretty sure that, yeah, it's 50.
It's tough setting up a perfect question.
Yeah.
Somebody like me looking.
Yeah, I have to say, I've used this question for, I think 3 years now, and you're the first one that has picked on that particular issue. All right, that's all right.
I'm gonna find them all.
You know what? I'll encourage that endeavor because, yeah. Let's see. What I want to do is pause the broadcast. Can I do that?